It's quite beautiful imagining staying the night near a lake, especially the sunset. The orange light dancing ecstatically on the water, the cool air brushing on your face like cotton, and the whistling as the air flies by. It's worth it, you might say. The experience I'm about to share with you will change that forever. My name is Keith. I'm 26 years old. I live in North Dakota. It's ice cold. I've been planning a trip to the Mille Lacs Lake in Minnesota for a while now. I was fortunately able to afford a plane ticket. After arriving, I put my gear down and started setting up the tent. I wanted to get things out of the way so I could enjoy the sunset like I had mentioned earlier. I sat down, the grass prickled on my legs, and it made me uncomfortable. It was also silent, too silent, as if I had earplugs on. I could hear my heartbeat, feeling unnerved. I pulled out my phone and started listening to a podcast to kill my thoughts. I promised myself I wouldn't have electronics out on this trip, but this moment was too unsettling to bear it. About 15 minutes into the podcast, I heard a stick snap. I quickly turned around, and a wave of cold flashes sunk into my stomach. There was a deer standing next to a tree. It didn't run when I noticed it. It pulled its right leg up and stared at me, as if I was the most interesting thing it had ever seen. I threw a rock near the deer in attempts to scare it off. The deer stared at the rock, then back at me. I slowly got up and walked towards it. The deer had multiple scars. So I headed back to my tent and zipped it up behind me. My heart was thudding at this point and my head got heavy and my neck sore. I felt like a baby, being nervous about this, but something about that deer felt off. It didn't react to any of my movement, and the scars. I put in my headphones and drifted to sleep. I woke up at 4 a.m. The birds were chirping. "What, 'tis early?" I thought. I didn't think much of it and just unzipped my tent to start a fire. It was mesmerizing, watching the chopped oak logs burn. Veins were strewn in the logs, filled with flame, pulsing in a crimson color and crackling. I noticed two eyes reflecting by the same tree as yesterday. It was the same deer. Its jaw was missing, threads of flesh hanging down where it used to be. It was groaning, like it was asking for help. It started approaching me in a very unstable manner. I quickly reacted and ran to my car to pull out my handgun, and the deer walked through the fire. Tossing clumps of ash into the air, it continued groaning as it approached me. I started firing rounds at it and made an almost human scream as it ran towards the woods injured. My hands were shaking and my hands had a clammy grip on my gun. I grabbed a few items out of my tent and ran to my car and got the hell out of Mille Lacs Lake. If you are reading this and are going to that lake, bring a gun. I thought I was being followed, but it was worse. Well, I thought I was being followed, but it was much worse than that. For a little bit of context, I am an older teen, relatively small stature, not physically fit at all. That's not to say I'm a bigger person. I'm fairly skinny actually, but I've got little to no muscle mass. That being said, I almost always keep some sort of weapon on me when I walk around, especially at night. I live in a huge city. It's constantly growing, but that hasn't helped our lack of housing or drug crisis. With limited housing and a surplus of substance abuse, this city becomes something out of a nightmare in the late hours. Remember this, it's important. I often stay late at school. My art teacher doesn't mind staying behind with me, and my few friends will occasionally hang out with me around the mall down the street from my school. Tonight specifically, we had been out really late. Checking the time made me feel my stomach drop, my cell phone reading 10:49 p.m. Shit, I'll be in trouble if I don't get home soon, I thought, knowing that my walk home would take a minimum of 20 minutes through a treacherous, homeless, overrun area. I just wanted to get home now, so I dismissed myself from my friends who would need to go the other way, and I walked towards the scary corner of my city. Immediately, something was wrong. The amount of people who would normally be around here was limited, to say the least. I didn't see anybody in my proximity, which was really weird. The streets were silent. I could hear my breathing, my footsteps. Then I slowed down so I could listen closer. That was another set of footsteps. All right. Hearing the quiet sound resonate from behind me was terrifying. I had bad experiences around here with catcallers and harassment during the daytime, but at nighttime, abductions and murders were commonplace around here. I inhaled sharply, grabbing my phone and texting my mom. Sounds like somebody is following me. I'm 15 minutes away from home. She didn't reply right away, which was okay. It gave me more time to listen to the footsteps getting closer behind me. I was reading to throw a punch at whomever it was behind me. I flinched, quickly turning around. I swear to fucking God I felt breathing on my neck, but now standing facing where the ominous steps had been, I froze. Whatever it wasn't human. Its fingers were about a foot long, crooked and bony, and it looked 7 or 8 feet tall. I was horrified. This was beyond my worst nightmare. What the fuck is this thing? I knew I should be running, but I felt paralyzed with fear though. When I saw it seem to vanish in thin air, I realized that I needed to get out of there. I turned around and just sprinted. Now, I have asthma and I'm physically unfit, so I wasn't very fast. While running, I looked down to see if my mother had replied to my text message, but to my surprise and unfortunately dread, there had been no message typed or sent from me to her. That was odd, since I distinctly remembered sending it. Looking up, I stopped running immediately. I hadn't moved an inch. Craning my neck, I looked behind me. It was closer. The fear I felt is indescribable. My world was crumbling, and I felt an unmatched sense of hopelessness. I'm going to die. The thing approached, towering over me. Then it traced a finger along my front, going down between my breasts, stomach, and then it plunged deep into my insides. It felt like a stinging feeling, red-hot metal pressing against my skin, but further in my body. It grabbed my intestines and to my dismay began ripping them out. A cackle I could never forget pierced my ears. It was deafening, and I screamed. I screamed until it dug its fingers into my throat and silenced me. Then it went black. I often stay late at school. My art teacher doesn't mind staying behind with me, and my few friends will occasionally hang out with me around the mall down the street from my school. Tonight specifically, we'd been out really late. Checking the time made me feel my stomach drop. My cell phone reading 10:49 p.m. Shit, I'll be in trouble if I don't get home soon. That trouble would repeat in a never-ending hell, trapping me in pain and misery. There's something seriously wrong with the farms in Ireland. Every summer when I was a child, my family would visit our relatives in the northwest of Ireland, in a rural, low-populated region called Donegal. Leaving our home in England, we would road trip through Scotland before taking a ferry across the Irish Sea, driving a further 3 hours through the last frontier of the United Kingdom. My 2 older brothers and I would know when we were close to our relative's farm. Donegal is a breathtaking part of the country. Its Atlantic coastway is wild and rugged, with pastoral green hills and misty mountains. The villages are very traditional, surrounded by numerous farms, cow and sheep fields. My family and I would always stay at my grandmother's farmhouse, which stands out a mile away due to its bright red-painted coating. These relatives are from my mother's side, and although Donegal, and even Ireland for that matter, is very sparsely populated, my mother's family is extremely large. She has a dozen siblings, which was always mind-blowing to me. And what's more, I have so many cousins, I've yet to meet them all. I always enjoyed these summer holidays on the farm, where I would spend every day playing around the grounds and feeding the different farm animals. Although I usually played with my 2 older brothers on the farm, by the time I was 12, they were too old to play with me and would rather go round to one of our cousins' houses nearby to either ride dirt bikes or play video games. So, I was mostly stuck on the farm by myself. Luckily, I had one cousin, Grainne, who lived close by and was around my age. Grainne was a tomboy, and so we more or less liked the same activities. I absolutely loved it here, and so did my brothers and my dad. In fact, we loved Donegal so much we even talked about moving here. But for some strange reason, although my mom was always missing her family, she was dead against any ideas of relocating. Whenever we asked her why, she would always have a different answer. There weren't enough jobs, it's too remote, and so on. But unfortunately for my mom, we always left the family decisions to a majority vote, and so, if the 4 out of 5 of us wanted to relocate to Donegal, we were going to. On one of these summer evenings on the farm, and having neither my brothers or grain to play with, my Uncle Dave, who ran the family farm, asks me if I'd like to come with him to see a baby calf being born on one of the nearby farms. Having never seen a newborn calf before, I enthusiastically agreed to tag along. Driving for 10 minutes down the bumpy country road, we pull outside the entrance of a rather large cow field, where, waiting for my Uncle Dave, were 3 other farmers. Knowing how big my Irish family was, I assumed I was probably related to these men too. Getting out of the car, these 3 farmers stare instantly at me, appearing both shocked and angry. Striding up to my Uncle Dave, one of the farmers yells at him, "What the hell's this Wayne doing here?" Taken back a little by the hostility, I then hear my Uncle Dave reply, "He needs to know. You know as well as I do they can't move here." Feeling rather uncomfortable by this confrontation, I was now somewhat confused. What do I need to know? And more importantly, why can't we move here? Before I can turn to Uncle Dave to ask him, the 4 men quickly halt their bickering and enter through the field gate entrance. Following the men into the cow field, the late evening had turned dark by now, and not wanting to ruin my good trainers by stepping in any cow pats, I walked very cautiously and slowly, so slow in fact, I'd gotten separated from my uncle's group. Trying to follow the voices through the darkness and thick grass, I suddenly stop in my tracks because in front of me, staring back with unblinking eyes, was a very large cow. So large I at first mistook it for a bull. In the past, my Uncle Dave had warned me not to play in the cow fields because if cows are with their calves, they may charge at you. Seeing this huge cow staring stonewall at me, I really was quite terrified because already knowing how freakishly fast cows can be, I knew if it charged at me, there was little chance I would outrun it. Thankfully, the cow stayed exactly where it was before losing interest in me and moving on. I know it sounds ridiculous talking about my terrifying encounter with a cow, but I was a city boy after all. Although I regularly fed the cows on the family farm, these animals still felt somewhat alien to me, even after all these years. Brushing off my close encounter, I continued to try and find my Uncle Dave. I eventually found them on the far side of the field's corner. Approaching my uncle's group, I then see they're not alone. Standing by them were 3 more men and a woman, all dressed in farmer's clothing. But surprisingly, my cousin Granny was also with them. I go over to Granny to say hello, but she didn't even seem to realize I was there. She was too busy staring over at something behind the group of farmers. Curious as to what Granny was looking at, I move around to get a better look, and what I see is another cow, just a regular red cow, laying down on the grass. Getting out my phone to turn on the flashlight, I quickly realized this must be the cow that was giving birth. Its stomach was swollen, and there were patches of blood stained on the grass around it. But then I saw something else. On the other side of this red cow, nestled in the grass beneath the bushes, was the calf. And rather sadly, it was stillborn. But what greatly concerned me wasn't that this calf was dead. What concerned me was its appearance. Although the calf's head was covered in red, slimy fur, the rest of it wasn't. The rest of it didn't have any fur at all, just skin. And what made every single fiber of my body crawl was that this calf's body, its brittle, infant body, it belonged to a human. Curled up into a fetal position, its head was indeed that of a calf. But what I should have been seeing as 2 front and hind legs were instead 2 human arms and legs, no longer or shorter than my own. Feeling terrified, and at the same time in disbelief, I leave the calf, or whatever it was, to go back to Granny, all the while turning to shine my flashlight on the calf, as though to see if it still had the same appearance. Before I can make it back to the group of adults, Granny stops me. With a look of concern on her face, she stares silently back at me before she says, "You're not supposed to be here. It was supposed to be a secret." Telling her that Uncle Dave had brought me, I then ask what the hell that thing was. "I'm not allowed to tell you," she says. "This was supposed to be a secret." 20 or 30 so minutes later, we were all standing around as though waiting for something, before the lights of a vehicle pull into the field, and a man gets out to come over to us. This man wasn't a farmer, he was some sort of veterinarian. Uncle Dave and the others bring him to tend to the calf's mother, and as he did, me and Granny were made to wait inside one of the men's tractors. We sat inside the tractor for what felt like hours. Even though it was summer, the night was very cold, and I was only wearing a soccer jersey and shorts. I tried prying Granny for more information as to what was going on, but she wouldn't talk about it, or at least wasn't allowed to talk about it. Luckily, my determination for answers got the better of her, because more than an hour later, with nothing but the cold night air and awkward silence to accompany us both, Granny finally gave in. This happens every couple of years, to all the farms here, but we're not supposed to talk about it. It brings bad luck. I then remembered something. When my dad said he wanted us to move here, my mom was dead against it. If anything, she looked scared just considering it. Almost afraid to know the answer, I work up the courage to ask Granny, "Does my mom know about this?" Sat stiffly in the driver's seat, Granny cranes her neck round to me. "Of course she knows," Granny reveals. Everyone here knows. It made sense now. No wonder my mom didn't want to move here. She never even seemed excited whenever we planned on visiting, which was strange to me, because my mom clearly loved her family. I then remembered something else. A couple of years ago, I remember waking up in the middle of the night inside the farmhouse, and I could hear the cows on the farm screaming. The screaming was so bad I couldn't even get back to sleep that night. The next morning, rushing through my breakfast to go play on the farm, Uncle Dave firmly tells me and my brothers to stay away from the cowshed. He didn't even give an explanation. Later on that night, after what must have been a good 3 hours, my Uncle Dave and the others come over to the tractor. Shaking Uncle Dave's hand, the veterinarian then gets in his vehicle and leaves out the field. I then notice 2 of the other farmers were carrying a black bag or something, each holding separate ends as they walked. I could see there was something heavy inside. and my first thought was they were carrying the dead calf, or whatever it was, away. Appearing as though everyone was leaving now, Uncle Dave comes over to the tractor to say we're going back to the farmhouse, and that we would drop Granny home along the way. Having taken Granny home, we then make our way back along the country road, where both me and Uncle Dave sat in complete silence. Uncle Dave driving, just staring at the stretch of road in front of us, and me staring silently at him. By the time we get back to the farmhouse, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and the farm was dead silent. Pulling up outside the farm, Uncle Dave switches off the car engine. Without saying a word, we both remain in silence. I felt too awkward to ask him what I had just seen, but I knew he was waiting for me to do so. Still not saying a word to one another, Uncle Dave turns from the driver's seat to me, and he tells me everything Granny wouldn't. "Don't you see now why you can't move here?" he says. "There's something wrong with this place, son. This place is cursed. Your mammy knows. She's known since she was a Wayne. That's why she doesn't want you living here." "Why does this happen?" I ask him. "This has been happening for generations, son. For hundreds of years, the animals in the county have been giving birth to these things." The way my Uncle Dave was explaining all this to me, it was almost like a confession, like he'd wanted to tell the truth about what's been happening here all his life. It's not just the cows, it's the pigs, the sheep, the horses, and even the dogs. The dogs? It's always the same. They have the head as normal, but the body's always different. It was only now, after a long and terrifying night, that I suddenly started to become emotional, and I was completely exhausted, realizing this was all too much for a young boy to handle. I think my Uncle Dave tried to put my mind at ease. "Don't you worry, son. They never live." Although I wanted all the answers, I now felt as though I knew far too much. But there was one more thing I still wanted to know. What do they do with the bodies? "Don't you worry about it, son. Just tell your mammy that you know, but don't go telling your brothers or your daddy now." She never wanted them knowing. By the next morning, and constantly rethinking everything that happened the previous night, I look around the farmhouse for my mom. Thankfully, she was alone in her bedroom folding clothes, and so I took the opportunity to talk to her in private. Entering her room, she asks me how it was seeing a calf being born for the first time. Staring back at her warm smile, my mouth opens to make words, but nothing comes out, and instantly, my mom knows what's happened. "I could kill your Uncle Dave," she says. "He said it was going to be a normal birth." Breaking down in tears right in front of her, my mom comes over to comfort me in her arms. "It's okay, chicken. There's no need to be afraid." After she tried explaining to me what Granny and Uncle Dave had already told me, her comforting demeanor suddenly turns serious. Clasping her hands upon each side of my arms, my mom crouches down, eyes level with me, and with the most serious look on her face I'd ever seen, she demands of me, "Listen, chicken, whatever you do, don't you dare go telling your brothers or your dad. They can never know. It's going to be our little secret, okay?" Still with tears in my eyes, I nod a silent yes to her. "Good man yourself," she says. We went back home to England a week later. I never told my brothers or my dad the truth of what I saw, of what really happens on those farms, and I refused to ever step foot inside of County Donegal again. But here's the thing. I recently went back to Ireland, years later in my adulthood, and on my travels I learned my mom and Uncle Dave weren't telling me the whole truth. This curse, it wasn't regional, and sometimes they do live. Good old times. I lived with my stepdad for 4 years after my mom abandoned us and started a new family upstate. It was an awful experience at first, but my stepdad and I pulled through and made the most of it. He cared and loved me as if I were his own. He filled the emptiness left by my mother. We moved to a new city to explore new life and opportunities. I was a shy kid who liked to keep to herself. My dad enrolled me in the best high school in the city. On the second week at the new school, I was sort of bullied by a group of students. At first I thought it was a one-time thing, but they continued for weeks, and I was so fed up with it that I told my dad. He was enraged, and the following day, he went to the school to make a complaint. I told my dad about it again, and he just smiled and asked me what would make me happier, switching schools or getting them back. I smiled back without saying a word, and he laughed. On the weekend of that week, he drove us out of town for a surprise he got me. Hours later, we reached a small cabin in the woods, and inside was the students who bullied me. Mouths gagged, legs and hands tied together, their eyes filled with fear. I enjoyed every moment of the aftermath. The following week, reports of the missing kids were all over the place. A lot of people were interrogated, but no trace of them was found. A couple of the parents offered rewards to anyone who could help them find their children, but I doubt anyone would recognize them after the good time we had.